Well, yo, what's up, NFL draft fans? Hope you guys are having a wonderful weekend, man. We are live here, and I'm so damn pumped for Mock Draft Monday. It's not really a thing that I'm doing. I just figured, it's Monday and, it sounded good. So what I wanted to do today, man, is just kind of run through a mock draft. We're going to talk about maybe some different trade scenarios that I really feel like could be happening. And obviously a lot of these talks and a lot of these rumors start to come out a lot more after the scouting combine, right? We get a lot of information, a lot of things happen. I think some things get overblown, but I just have some feelings personally to myself that I feel like might happen in this upcoming mock draft. I think there's going to be a lot of shocking picks, some things that really don't make sense now that I think in a couple months, before the actual draft happens, really will. And obviously, as we all know, with NFL free agency, man, anything can change. Anything at any time can change. So there's a whole bunch of nuances going on there, but we're going to break it down. We're going to talk about the round one mock. And guys, if you love NFL draft content, if you love Denver sports, show me some love, hit that subscribe button, like the video. I'm on my way to 1,000 subs, and I would appreciate it if you guys help me get there. So without further ado, guys, let's get the ball rolling. All right, so we are going to do all of the teams here. We're going to do just one round. We're going to roll up with it and enter the draft. Now, here's kind of my thinking process behind all of this, guys, something that I want you guys to, be able to understand yourselves. I believe that there's going to be some teams that definitely make trades for quarterbacks, but I don't know if it's necessarily going to happen early on in the draft. All right. So personally, if you're going to ask me, I think that the Tennessee Titans are going to be one of the teams that end up getting Sam Darnold. I think it makes a ton of sense for them with Brian Callahan as their head coach. Brian Callahan has a history, obviously coming from the Zach Taylor, Sean McVay scheme, and who coached with Sean McVay as well. The Minnesota Vikings coach. I always get brain farts when I get here. So, he's going to be able to come from Minnesota to Tennessee and not really have much of a learning curve. I think it's a really good fit. He obviously fits super well in that scheme last year. And so I think it'll be a pretty solid fit for him in Tennessee. Overall, I think Brian Callahan will finally be able to get his guy, and it's just a fit that kind of makes sense. So with that being said, they're going to be good at quarterback. That's just my personal opinion in terms of what they're going to end up getting. And so what they're really going to do in this draft in particular is they're going to go ahead and they're going to get the best player available, right? I mean, the guy that is just a once in a lifetime type of generational player. And that is obviously going to be Travis Hunter. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to lock that one in for Tennessee for those reasons. Now, in terms of the Browns, right? The Browns, as we all know, they're looking at trading who? They're going to trade Myles Garrett. Okay. And Myles Garrett is not going to, he's going to be gone from Cleveland. He's not going to be somebody that you could just replace right off of the bat. But Cleveland is in a world of trouble. Could they take a quarterback here? Yes. But they're really stuck in the Deshaun Watson contract for a while. It's a terrible situation that they have there. I don't really see any other way out of it, but just trying to build up the defense as much as they possibly could. They were in the playoffs just 2 years ago, not this year, but the year before in 2023. So, the defense has shown that they can carry the load if needed. And that's kind of the way that this team is built out. So you're going to lose Myles Garrett. You're going to accumulate a lot of picks, which I think is a really good move for the Browns, given where they are. And you're going to give them Abdul Carter, who's obviously the best pass rusher in this draft. Going into the New York Giants, all right, so this is where I feel like it's an obvious quarterback fit, right? You look at all the free agency quarterbacks, doesn't make sense for the Giants. Brian Daboll, Joe Sheen, they're guys that are coaching for their jobs this year. And a lot of people think, well, yeah, if you coach for your job, then that means, you're not going to want to get a rookie quarterback because you're going to want to win as many games. Well, yeah, that's kind of true. But in this particular case, I always feel like when you draft a quarterback, it kind of maybe buys you another year or so, especially if that quarterback starts to show a little bit of, potential. Like if they end up drafting Cam Ward, which I have here, I think what ends up happening there is if Cam Ward starts to shine and he's somebody that, they really feel like, hey, there's a good future on him, they'll buy him another. Sorry, hold on one second. I just got a message I got to respond to. Cool. And so what happens there is it kind of buys you a couple more years. I think Cam Ward is a pretty good fit. I don't think he's the best quarterback in this draft, but I ultimately think that's the route that they're going to end up going. They're going to want to go for the high upside, big arm talent type of a player. Shedeur Sanders would make a ton of sense here as well. But I'm going to kind of hold off on that for my initial mock today because I just feel like, you know what, man, there's a lot of situation. Like there's a lot of teams that will always go based off of potential. I don't know why. I really don't get it. I feel like it's always a scheme fit. And that's why I feel like Cam Ward is going to be somebody that makes a lot of sense there. All right, let's regroup now that all the messages that I'm getting here flying on my laptop have stopped. All right, so I'm going to go with Cam Ward there. And then that's going to be a really nice situation setting up for the Patriots, right? The Patriots, they got Mike Vrabel coming in. They have a really good young quarterback in Drake May, someone I think is going to be a stud in this league, was really high on him last year. And they obviously need to protect him. I mean, there's no doubt about it. So they're going to go with who I feel like is the best tackle in this draft in Will Campbell. He makes a ton of sense. You can put him up a tackle. He's got a lot of versatility. He can swing inside if you need to, depending on what it is that they do in free agency. So I like Will Campbell going there a lot. And that leaves the interesting part of this draft. So here's kind of my logic. All right. You're probably not going to see this, and I'm really not doing it because I've never seen this in a mock draft. But here, I was kind of thinking through some different franchises that could really just surprise get a quarterback, and that would actually make a ton of sense, right? And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make the trade, and I'm going to walk you guys. I'm going to talk you guys why this is going to be the case. I'm just going to force the trade because who cares? I will have the New Orleans Saints as the team that could jump the Jets and the Raiders in order to jump up there and get themselves a quarterback. And I actually really, really like this move. It actually makes a lot of sense when you walk through it. All right. So you look at the Saints, guys. The Saints are an absolute mess when it comes to their cap situation. It is terrible. It is absolutely terrible there. Yes, they're going to get rid of a lot of guys and they'll do some post June 1st cuts and all that kind of stuff. But if they can just figure out either, getting rid of Derek Carr with a post June 1st designation or just keeping him on the roster for one more season, eating the cap space, doing what you can to be able to free it up later, it actually makes a lot of sense for them to bring a rookie like a Shedeur Sanders in there. Because if you needed him to play right away in Kellen Moore's new scheme, great. If not, you just need him to sit back and learn. He could do that as well behind Derek Carr. He's probably going to end up getting a chance at some point in the season to end up having him play there. But I really think it's an underrated move, and it's a good part of the draft to be able to do it because you got the Jets and you've got the Raiders lurking. Kellen Moore is going to be there. He knows he's going to be there for a long time. He knows that it's a long process. And in order to really make sure that this team is successful, they got to figure out a way to get out of that cap situation. They cannot keep just redoing deals. All it's going to do is end up biting them and continuously killing them. So I think it's a new sheriff in town. Kellen Moore is going to love what Shedeur Sanders can do. I think he fits that system super well, especially from what you've seen when he was with Dak, and then you saw what he did with Jalen Hurts. He doesn't ask a whole bunch of the quarterbacks. He needs them to just be able to be really solid, good leaders, guys that are smart with the football. And watching Shedeur in Colorado, that's what he does. He's a lot better in the pocket than people give him credit for. I mean, yes, did he take some bad sacks? Sure. But there was a lot of times I saw him stand there strong and deliver really, really accurate balls. He's an extremely accurate passer. And I think he makes a lot of sense there. They can just use this year as a way to, get through the cap hell that they're in, have their franchise quarterback that they can just develop in the background, try to get as many good young skill positions around them, and then really cut the fat next season, get their cap situation under control, and move forward that way. I think it's something that makes a lot of sense, and I really like the idea of Shedeur going to New Orleans for a lot of different reasons. And I think that could be a really underratedly good pairing there. So Shedeur Sanders going number 5 to the Saints, who trade up with the Jacksonville Jaguars. All right, so that keeps the Raiders here at 6. They're going to have to figure out something with the quarterback situation. With Pete Carroll there, he's somebody that always is built around defense, strong running game. There's a lot of different options, but there's no way in hell that they can pass up on somebody like Mason Graham. He makes too much sense. Oh, no, I made the mistake. How do I even go back? God damn it. Let me go ahead and just that's very annoying. Sorry about that, guys. That was such an amateur move. All right, so we got Travis Hunter going here Abdul Carter going here. We got Cam Ward going there. We got Will Campbell rolling to the Patriots. All right, here's the trade. My bad, guys. That was embarrassing. All right, and then so Mason Graham, I think, falling to the at number 6 to the Raiders is. I mean, I hate the Raiders, but I think it's really good move. It's something that would be a very big time Pete Carroll move. Mason Graham is kind of one of those almost can't miss prospects in this draft. He's an absolute bully on the inside. That'll really shore up their defensive line. It doesn't show that it's a need there, but I love the idea of that. Him and Max Crosby, that's going to be a terrifying line. Their offensive line, could use some work, but it's definitely not bad. It's actually pretty decent overall. And then you could build the rest of the skill position players out later in the draft. You could find yourself your running back. You can get a couple more playmakers, a wide receiver, and then maybe you figure it out for a year or two, a quarterback, right? But what Pete Carroll has shown is that he wants to win a certain way, and he can do that. And I think that this is a move that would make a ton of sense for him, which brings you on to the Jets. And at the end of the day, who really cares about the Jets, right? But I love me some Aaron Glenn. I think Aaron Glenn is a stud, and I think Aaron Glenn is going to want to get himself a hell of a pass rusher. And there's a lot of options here, man. There's a lot. But I think James Pierce Jr. is somebody that's ultimately going to go this high. I really do. Because teams are not going to forget just how highly touted he was before the season. He had a little bit of a down year this year, extremely highly recruited, unbelievable amounts of talent in that kid. I mean, it really is ridiculous. 6'5", he's long, 243, crazy motor. He's a really good player, man. He had 13 sacks last season and then 8 in this year, but they're not going to forget about that. They're going to look at, was it injuries? Why was there a little bit of a dip in production? And you're talking about somebody that grades out this well, still has 8 sacks, 43 hurries, and that's considered a down season. So I think James Pierce Jr. is probably going to be the best overall pass rusher when it's all said and done in this draft. Aaron Glenn is going to love him. He's going to be able, man, with Will McDonald and James Pierce, it's going to be a terror, an absolute terror there. So really looking forward to that for sure. I think that's going to be a really good match. Now, here is where I think trade number 2 goes, right? Because I look at Carolina. They're a team that needs a lot of picks. They're a team that if I was their GM, I'd probably look at trying to trade back, especially if the board fell this way. Because yes, they can get players that can help them. But man, oh man, is that a team that could utilize as many picks as they can, especially because they had to give up so many to go up and get Bryce Young, right? And he showed a lot of talent and he showed a lot of potential at the second half of that season. So they might really have something. And I think right here, the Dallas Cowboys are looking and they're saying, man, there could be a team behind us looking to jump up. There could be the Chicago Bears can go up and get their guy. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to say the Dallas Cowboys are going to make a trade with the Panthers to go up. I'm going to force the trade and go up to number 8 and get the best running back by far and away in this draft. I know it's a little bit crazy to think about, but the Cowboys are a pretty damn talented roster overall. I mean, they could use some pass rush help for sure. They could use another weapon next to CeeDee Lamb. I get that. And they can use some tools to be able to help their O-line. But you get Dak Prescott, Ashton Genty, you team them up with CeeDee Lamb. That's a hell of a tandem that you have there. Their run game was terrible last year. And I think they're going to just want to try to figure some things out defensively for them there. And who knows? Who knows? Jerry Jones definitely likes to make splash moves. And I think after he kind of got a little bit of a heat for their, the head coach that they ended up hiring, Schottenheimer, I think this will kind of put him back into relevancy. He's going to make a little bit of a splash on draft night. So Ashton Genty going to the Dallas Cowboys at 8. And I don't think it's that bad of a move overall. So the Jaguars here, man, they traded out of the 5th pick. They gained some extra picks. And they're still able to get the best corner, Will Johnson, in the draft. I think they're going to be thrilled with that. They could use interior help. There's a lot of really good guys that they can get in later. If they didn't trade back, Mason Graham is definitely the pick at 5, in my opinion. But Will Johnson is someone that would, fit right in, help that secondary out, and, be able to, shore up a lot of the issues that they have on the back end there. No doubt about it. All right, so now we get into the Chicago Bears, and the Chicago Bears, they're probably going to be tempted to like continue to get as many weapons around Caleb Williams, but that would just be, honestly, it would just be very stupid in a multitude of ways. Kelvin Banks makes so much sense, right? You've got Brian Johnson. Brian Johnson comes from Detroit. Detroit knows you got to build this team inside out. You've got to be able to shore up the offensive line, and Caleb Williams is getting killed last year, and Kelvin Banks is somebody that can come in. He fits really well in that scheme. He's a very good tackle, but a lot of people say he could be an elite guard. You could play him inside early. You could flip him outside if you need him. The versatility is great. It's just a pick that makes way too much sense, which leads to the next tackle. It's going to be Josh Simmons. I think both these teams, similar situations, right? They just need to be able to shore up their offensive line a little bit more. Josh Simmons is someone that he also has inside-out versatility. You can put him on the right side. He can learn behind Trent Williams. There's a lot of different tools there, but very, very good measurables overall. He's somebody that some people believe he could be the best tackle in the draft. He's got all the tools and the measurables, but you can kick him inside and kick him out when you need. He fits the zone blocking scheme very well there with Shanahan as well. It's about time for them to start focusing on that and get back to basics and be able to do all that good stuff. All right, so now we got Carolina. Carolina's traded back a few picks. They got a couple of picks later, which I think is a really smart move for them. They could even look to trade back again. But in this case, I'm not necessarily going to do all that. I think it's a little bit too much. And somebody that is available here that will soon be flying up draft boards is Walter Nolan. Honestly, I think he's somebody that could be taken in the top 15. I think he makes a ton of sense for Carolina, a team that desperately needs help across their D-line. The fact that he can play inside and he can play outside, he's a menace. He's such a good player. He could help their defensive line out a lot. I like that move. They could still move back a little bit. They could take him at 12. I don't think it's a reach. I think Walter Nolan is that good, and I dig it. Ted McMillan is somebody that I wanted to take here. He could make a lot of sense, but ultimately you got to keep building up the line. You can get your weapons later on in this draft. There's a lot of skill position players where it is deep, but you can't really pass up on somebody that I think is really going to be elite in Walter Nolan. I'm a really big fan of him. So I love that pick there. And then as much as I wanted to give, I know Tyler Booker was somebody that a lot of experts are mocking to the Dolphins, right? There's quite a bit of that. I just don't see them doing that. They haven't done it in the past. I don't see why they would do it now. I think they're going to lose Javon Holland. It's going to have a huge hole on the back end of that defense. Who really knows what the Dolphins are going to do? They need to realize that they need to become tougher and they need to be able to win games when it gets cold. I don't know. I don't think they're going to do it. I think they're going to go with Malachi Starks. He's a playmaking safety. He'll be a really good fill-in if they do ultimately lose Javon Holland, which I think that they will. And I like the fit there overall. I think he's a really good player, but they're going to keep neglecting their line. Maybe you can address it in the second and third round with some interior guys and some guys that maybe you can develop later on. So I'm good with Malachi Starks going there. All right. So now we're getting to the Colts, and everybody and their mom is drafting Tyler Warren or projecting Tyler Warren to go to the Colts. And I tried to look at a lot of other things that would make sense. And obviously, they can go DB, they can go edge, right? I mean, they can go with Mike Green, somebody that would, he's a terror, or Jamal Stewart or Mikael Williams. But ultimately, guys, like, it just makes too much sense to get Anthony Richardson, a borderline elite level prospect tight end, in Tyler Warren. And as a Bronco fan, this would break my heart because I would die to have him fall. But I think I run through a lot of different scenarios, and it just makes too much sense to have Tyler Warren get skipped from there. Which brings us to the Panthers. All right. The Falcons. The Falcons here are kind of, they're an interesting team, right? They shocked the whole draft world last year by moving up and taking the quarterback. And Michael Penix looked good. He looked good in the second half of the season. I think they're going to focus on building around him. They need to shore up that defense, especially their pass rush. We saw when they played us here in Denver. I felt super optimistic about the game because they had like 5 sacks or something the whole season going into that like week 8 game. They're terrible at rushing the passer. No doubt about it. They could use some linebacker help, and they can use some help in the secondary as well. But their biggest need has got to be edge. They got to get somebody that can get after the passer. And there's a lot of good edge players, but Mike Green is somebody that I know I said that James Pierce could probably be the best. Mike Green could probably be the best too, man. These are the top two guys rushing the passer in this draft, in my opinion, from a standpoint of how high their ceiling is. Ridiculously good players, both of them high motors, crazy skill set. So Mike Green going to the Falcons at 15 makes a ton of sense. It's a really good player at a position that they absolutely need. It's going to be huge for them. So, and then, it's going to be a little bit of a edge rush here with the Arizona Cardinals, right? And I think these could be obviously flipped, but I think, Mike Green and Mikael Williams can go in this, whether it's Mikael to the Falcons or Mike Green to the Falcons. I think that the Cardinals just need to continue to be able to find a little bit more juice on their defense. I wanted to go with an offensive lineman here again, but like I said, their D-line as a whole could use a lot of work. And Mikael Williams is somebody that, 6'5", 265, he could play some edge. He could even play like 5 technique on some different alignments as well. Super good overall player from Georgia, and I think he makes a ton of sense there. All right, so now we're getting into who is it? The Bengals. The Bengals would be really tempted right here to go in a multitude of different routes, especially if they lose T. Higgins, which looks like they're going to franchise tag him. But if they lose T. Higgins, man, you could take Tet McMillan and you could plug him right in. But it doesn't look like they might be losing him, or they might just be thinking to themselves, we're good on offense, right? Even without T. Higgins, they're good on offense. They got Joe Burrow. They've got Jamar Chase. Obviously, Joe Burrow can make a lot of good things happen. They still need to be able to shore up that horrendous defense that really cost them the opportunity to make it to the playoffs last year. And there's a player available that, I think is borderline elite. I mean, he might be like 1B in some people's eyes to Mason Graham. Super good player, very high floor. Kenneth Grant is somebody he can go in there and he can plug right into that defense. They got a new defensive coordinator there. They're going to be losing their nose tackle, and why not bring in somebody that can really help with the run and the pass? The guy is impressive. I mean, Kenneth Grant he rated as like one of the best interior pass rushers as well. So really like Kenneth Grant going there to the Bengals at 17. And then we get to the Seahawks. The Seahawks I'm not going to lie, they're probably the team that, like, in a way, they gave me the most amount of problems when it came to like, what are they going to do? Because there's so many different things that they can do when it comes to this draft. They obviously are horribly bad on the interior of that line, which is ultimately, I think, where they're going to go. I really do. And there's a couple guys that right now that I kind of have to mind, right? I mean, in one of my mocks, I put Gray Zabel there. I think Gray Zabel is somebody that could actually make a ton of sense. I think he ends up going in the first round. They could go with Membu. There's a lot of guys, but ultimately, Tyler Booker is somebody that the more I read about him and the more I look into him, the more I think he's going to end up being the first interior lineman taken in this entire draft class. And it's mainly because they just talk about, they're glowing about the type of leader that he is, the type of alpha that he is in the room. And, even though he doesn't necessarily have all that versatility, him being able to play inside in a huge position in need for the Seahawks makes a lot of sense. I did want to trade back for them, but I think Tyler Booker is going to be too good to pass up. I think he's going to be flying up draft boards, and I do ultimately believe there's going to be two guys that will most likely be interior players, him and Gray Zabel, that I do think will end up going in the first round. So I like that. I like Seattle Seahawks going with Gray Zabel. So here's where it gets interesting, because as you guys notice here, you got Tet McMillan available. He's kind of dropping. I think he is going to drop a little bit. I think he's a really good player, but I think things are starting to cool off. The combine is probably going to be bigger for him than any other player. But overall, an unbelievably good prospect. And, you got the Broncos at 20 behind the Bucks. You've got the Steelers at 21, and you've got the Chargers at 22. All three of those teams, and even the Packers at 23, all four of those teams would be dying for a wide receiver or could use a wide receiver, right? So the other team that has is the Ravens. The Ravens They're not always the most aggressive, but they make moves, and they make good moves during the draft. And I can see the Ravens hitting up the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and saying, hey, dudes, let's make a deal. They want to jump the Broncos. They want to jump the Steelers, the Chargers, the Packers, to be able to go up there and get their guy in Tet McMillan. And let me tell y'all, that would be a hell of a move for the Baltimore Ravens to do, to take Teteroa McMillan, to be able to get it there. They can finally get Lamar Jackson an alpha number one, a true number one, somebody with size. Man, does he fit well with Zay Flowers and that obviously with Derrick Henry running the ball, with the two tight ends that they got, with Rashad Bateman being able to take the top off over the top. That would be a really good move, and a move that I think the Ravens would definitely be willing to make should Tet McMillan be available at 19. It makes way too much sense. Which brings me here to my Denver Broncos, everybody. And I always like to switch it up for the Broncos because it's fun. But there's no doubt about it. The more you think about it, the more it makes sense. Colston Loveland, we've made several videos about it as to why he's a good fit. Him or Tyler Warren, there's so many guys I love. I'd be fine if the Broncos took Luther Burden. I'd be fine if they took Ibuka. I like both those guys. There's a lot of playmakers and players that I feel like I would love to see them take, like aside from Loveland. I also really love Kenneth Grant if he's available, which he is in a lot of mock drafts. And I love Walter Nolan. But in this particular case, they're both gone earlier. If the board felt like this and I was Denver, I'd be tempted to look at Luther Burden because of what he can add. But ultimately, Sean Payton gets his joker, Colston Loveland, to the Broncos. It just makes too much sense. It was a little boring because it's happened so many times in terms of where he's being drafted. But I feel like it's just something that personally I believe makes a ton of sense, which leaves Luther Burden falling to the Pittsburgh Steelers is a godsend for them. It's a great fit. I think Luther Burden is going to be – I think he's ultimately going to be the best wide receiver in this draft class for sure. People just keep forgetting about before the season started, he was a top 5 player, consensus, going into the draft. Missouri just had a terrible offense. It wasn't his fault. The guy's ridiculously explosive. He's a great player. Love to have him in Denver. I think he's a great fit for the Pittsburgh Steelers there. For them building whatever they end up doing with their quarterback situation, who knows? But yeah, him and Pickens will be a pretty solid combo, mixed in with, Pat Freiermuth and they always have a good run game there. I like that fit a lot. I think it's something that makes a ton of sense. Aside from quarterback, that's probably their biggest need. All right, getting over to the Chargers at number 22. They are going to be looking at a lot of different options. When you look at how Jim Harbaugh built the team early, he built the team, fortify the run game, fortify the defensive line and the offensive line. He did a good job of that. He's going to continue to build on top of that with somebody like a Shamar Stewart. And the reason that Shamar Stewart makes sense is because of his absolute length, right? The 6'6", 290, dominated the Senior Bowl, unbelievable run defender, which is always going to be a benefit for them, but a lot of tools and a lot of upside there. They've got an aging defensive line. They got, with Joey Bosa kind of getting up there in age, they could use somebody like a Shamar Stewart on their D-line. So I think it's a really good pick, and it's a pick that makes sense for somebody like Jim Harbaugh that wants to keep building it. He'll find his wide receivers, and he'll find his tight end, and he'll find his running back, especially because they're so deep later in the draft. But he's someone that likes to build it up early with guys on the offensive and the defensive line. They took Joe Alt last year. They take Shamar Stewart this year at 22. All right, going over to the Green Bay Packers, right? A lot of people have made this comparison as to, it just makes a lot of sense. Jair Alexander, you don't know where the hell he's going to go, right? They're not going to take a wide receiver in the first round. They just never do. Emeka Ibuka, I think, would be a really fun pick for them. Is he a true number one? I got him a little bit more of a slot, but I think he's probably the best. He could be the best wide receiver that they have. But they need an alpha. If they're not going to be able to get that, then I think that they're going to look for a Jair Alexander replacement and somebody that will go in the draft early, that's flying up, that's a really, really good player, man, dynamic, is Jahdae Barron out of Texas. Not the biggest guy at 5'11", but you look at his coverage grades, you look at how consistent he's been over the last 3 seasons. He's played a ton of football. Somebody that, 5 picks this last year. The passer rating of 34.2 against him is very ridiculous. He's a very good player, a true CB1. I think he's the best. I think he's the second best cornerback in this draft, easily behind Will Johnson. No doubt about it. I love Jahdae Barron. I think that's a fit that makes just way too much sense there, in my opinion. So love that. And then here's where we get really interesting with the with the Vikings, right? The Vikings can go multitude of ways. Yeah, they need a running back. They could use some interior help like you see here, and they can use help in the secondary. But, Brian Flores was able to get a lot out of this defense, a lot more out of the pass rush and a lot more out of the D-line than a lot of people expected. And I think that they could look at this and be like, man, we could add more to this, and we can continue to find a guy that can eat up space and be a dominant interior pass rusher. It'll really let the rest of the defense open up, especially with all their disguises, and they won't have to blitz as much as they did. And someone I'm really high on that I think is a very, very good player is Derek Harmon out of Oregon. He fits super well with the Vikings. He's a really good player. He's somebody that, like I said, can play inside as a true nose, at least on third downs, especially to be able to get the passer. He can play all across the line of scrimmage at 6'5", 310 pounds. He's solid, really good against the run. Take a look at this kid, man. Derek Harmon is an absolute stud. He had 43 quarterback hurries. I think that led the entire FBS. And yeah, I mean, he's a stud. He's going to be flying up draft boards. He's probably going to crush it at the combine too. And I really like the pick for the Vikings. All right, I'm going to take a breath. Let me know in the comments, guys, what y'all think. Is there some crazy picks? You guys think I'm out of my mind for having the Saints be the one that trade up to get Shedeur Sanders? Hey, I dig it. I liked it. I thought it made a lot of sense. But let me know what y'all think below as we keep on moving through this. So, number 25, where is that? Oh, we got the Texans. We got the Texans rolling up. All right. I really wanted to go Emeka Egbuka for the Texans because God, would he be a good fit there. And he'd be such a good player. And you don't know what's going to be happening there with Tank Dell. But ultimately, they took a little bit of a step back offensively this year for a couple of reasons. I wouldn't say CJ Stroud played worse. People say it was a slump. I think he had it was just a lot more difficult for him, but also they emphasized the run game, emphasized Joe Mixon a lot. And he was getting a lot more pressure up the middle than he did in his rookie year. They need to be able to shore that up and be able to bring some youth onto their offensive line. And Armand Membu is someone that I love when looking into him more and more because I started doing a lot more offensive line work lately since my Broncos don't really need an O-lineman. But Armand Membu is a freak of nature. He played tackle a lot at Missouri, but a lot of people – he allowed no sacks, by the way. But a lot of people say that he's better as a guard in the NFL. At 6'3", is a little bit shorter. That would make sense. But the guard tackle versatility, the Texans could implement him and put him right in the middle at either guard spot and be able to really help their young quarterback, CJ Stroud, be able to take the next level. I like that pick a lot. I think he makes sense. If Armand Membu is not there because he goes, earlier to a team like the Seahawks, they could end up taking Tyler Booker. They can go Gray Zabel here. But I like the Texans being able to build out the interior of their offensive line. I think it's something that just makes a ton of sense. Which leaves me to the Los Angeles Rams. The LA Rams, a lot of question marks here, man. You don't know what they're going to do. A quarterback, is Matthew Stafford going to go back? They're going to trade him. What's going to happen? Ultimately, I think they keep Matthew Stafford, and regardless of if they did or not, they need to be able to help out whatever quarterback's playing with a tackle, a true tackle. Josh Connerly Jr. here. He's the best available pure tackle left on this board, in my opinion. He can play either tackle spot, and they can continue to build out through the trenches there. It was a tough one for me because it doesn't necessarily seem like a LA Rams type of a move, but it just makes a lot of sense. And they've shown that they can go in a multitude of ways, and they also show that they can hit pretty good on those late drafts. Which brings us here to the Buccaneers. The Buccaneers, they traded back from 19 to 27. They got a lot of picks for it. I think it's a good thing. You look at where they're sitting now, they could use some edge help. They can use some linebacker help. There's some guys that I kind of liked, right? I mean, Jack Sawyer, I wouldn't say he's necessarily the best edge like this one shows left, but he's someone that potentially could make sense. Nick Scorton can make a lot of sense. But the more and more I think about it, the more I think, man, they might just – I think that the Bucs are really going to want to get a pass rusher or maybe a linebacker, but maybe most likely a pass rusher here. They might end up going with the guy that has the most amount of overall tools and skill set. And another guy that I think going to tear it up at the combine. And that's Donovan Iziruwaku. I think is how you say it. Iziruwaku. Stud, guys. This dude is going to be flying up draft boards too. Really, really good player. A lot of experience playing, but he's still only 21 years old. But 6'2", 247. A little bit undersized, no doubt about it. But he's somebody that I think can make a lot of sense, especially in their scheme there, as a really, really good, pure pass rusher. He also would have made sense to the Ravens too, had the Ravens kind of stayed put. But those are two teams that really stood out to me in terms of a fit for him. And I just think he's a menace, man. I think he's a menace. I don't really care that much that he's a couple inches shorter than what's ideal. The dude just absolutely hauls ass, and his motor is pretty damn crazy. So going into the Lions right now, a lot of people are taking Jack Sawyer to the Lions. They think it makes a lot of sense. I mean, in a way it does, but I just don't think Jack Sawyer is really worthy of a first-round pick. And the Lions have, and I think under Dan Campbell, they're going to continue to build it based off of toughness, kicking your ass on the offensive line of scrimmage, running the ball, and playing good defense. And they could use a guy on the interior, whether it be a center or a guard, as you see there. And Gray Zabel, guys, I'm sorry, he's going to be a tackle, but Gray Zabel is just, he's too good, man. He's a perfect fit. He can play center. He can play guard, and he can even play tackle. He doesn't get beat a lot. He's going to help them out a lot there to continue running the ball. And he just makes a ton of sense there at number 28 for the Lions. So I really, really like that pick there, which brings me over to the Washington Commanders. Now, I looked at this and I said, man, they could go pass rusher. I didn't like any of the pass rushers available. They could go corner, but ultimately, and they do need a lot. They do need a tackle, which is why I was like, really intrigued by. But ultimately, guys, Emeka Egbuka is there. Man, would he be an unbelievably good weapon to help Jaden Daniels out, opposite of Terry McLaurin. He fits this offense like a glove. That would be a really good move for them. And one thing that Jaden Daniels has proven is even though their O-line wasn't all that great last year, he can cover a lot of it up by using his legs to extend plays or just getting the ball out of his hands quickly. They can address tackle either in free agency or with a developmental guy later. But I love this pick for the Washington Commanders. Emeka Egbuka going there at number 29. All right, we are at the last stretch here. We got the Buffalo Bills. Now, I didn't really necessarily like this pick that much for the Bills, but I think it makes a lot of sense. I'm going to go with Jihad Campbell, and we're going to talk through as to why. When you look at the way the board kind of fell to him, the best available player, like on their specific positions, is Jihad Campbell, linebacker. He's an unbelievable off-ball linebacker. He can fly around. Him and Mike Milano would be a great tandem. He can even, rush the passer from different blitz sets and do a lot of things. But being able to cover the middle of the field, continue to be just dominant, I liked it. I didn't really like Tyleik Williams or any of the interior guys as much at this particular spot. But I just feel like, adding Jihad Campbell to this defense could really help continue to fortify what it is that they need. They could go in a lot of different ways, but Buffalo overall is a pretty solid team. They just need to get a little bit tougher. They need to get a little bit better against the run, even though they were pretty good overall last year. And just help out the middle of that field that they've got. And Jihad Campbell, I think, is someone that, does he fill a big need for them? No, he's a need, but he's just a BPA at this point. He's just too good to pass up. I love him at pick 30. I think he makes a ton of sense there. Which brings me to the Chiefs, man. The Chiefs. I think the Chiefs are one of those teams that can certainly move up if there's a specific tackle that they're targeting. No doubt about it. But in this particular case, I just couldn't find a trade partner that would make sense. I do think they're going to take a tackle or a D lineman. They like to build out in the trenches. They just don't always get the best guys there, but they like to do it. They took Princely, whatever his name was last year, in the third round, thinking they could, he can come in and play right away. Truth is, he couldn't. Maybe another year he can help, but they could still use more help on that offensive line, as we saw in the draft. And Wyatt Milam, dude, is someone that would actually makes a ton of sense for the Chiefs. Not only do I think he's a really solid tackle and probably the best remaining tackle of all these other guys that PFF is showing, but if I remember correctly, he's got a ridiculous amount of snaps. Let me see. Or experience. Yeah, I mean, a ton of experience, ton of snaps too, right? Like you're talking 2,500 snaps in college, played 3 seasons, 24, 35 games played in college. Just really solid overall, long, athletic. He's a little bit older, but they'll be fine with it. They need somebody that can come in and play right away. I don't think they want to go down the route of developing a guy. So if they can get a guy like Wyatt Milam, who I think is going to be better earlier in his career, but maybe have a little bit more of a ceiling than the other guys, Wyatt Milam is someone that would make a lot of sense. So I like him to go there to the Kansas City Chiefs. But honestly, if it was up to me, I would say I wish the Kansas City Chiefs would just trade Patrick Mahomes somewhere else. That would be pretty cool. But that ain't going to happen. All right, and then we're going to round this out, guys. The last pick here. The Eagles, man, they just looking. They've always done it. They say we're going to get the best corners. We're going to get the best pass rushers. We're going to get the best D linemen. That's how they like to build their team, always inside out. And they're going to look at this, and they're going to see, okay, there's a few of these guys that make a lot of sense. I'll get to one of them in particular, in Darius Alexander, because I think that they would fall in love with somebody like him with that size. And then on the edge, I think that they're going to love like a Nick Scorton as well. So I kind of went back and forth between the two of them. But I ultimately believe that Harry Roseman, he just might not be able to really help himself. And he might just get another, defensive lineman in Darius Alexander. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to switch it up last minute. Darius Alexander goes to the Eagles. Like I said, it could be Nick Scorton too. He might be a little bit of a better fit. But, man, out of Toledo, you look at Darius Alexander's just sheer numbers and what he's done everywhere that he's been a menace. Unbelievably good player. And he just makes sense for a team like the Eagles if they're looking for kind of more of a 3-tech or a 5-tech guy that's a little bit more size. Darius Alexander makes sense. Or so would Nick Scorton. So I'll let y'all read my my recap here. I made a couple trades. I'll highlight those, and then we'll wrap this thing up. So I had the New Orleans Saints trading up to get Shedeur Sanders at 5. I think it's a really good situation for him with the new head coach, like we had talked about, and them being in cap hell. They could just ride the season out, get all these guys, pay them whatever they need to be able to get rid of them next season. They cannot continue to push all this money down the road, and I like the fit there with Kellen Moore. So we had the trade there. We had another trade where the Cowboys went up with Carolina to take Ashton Genty. And then I think we had a third. Did we have it? Yeah, we had a third trade where the Ravens went up to 19 with Tampa to get Ted McMillan, who had fallen. Otherwise, that is the rest of them. So that was a lot, guys. My mouth is dry. I appreciate y'all tuning in, man. Hope you guys enjoyed that like I did. But that's my mock draft, man. Mock draft Mondays. We're going to keep doing this. We might switch it up and start doing it team specific. Maybe I'll just do like a 7-rounder for the Broncos next week. But let me know what you guys want to see. And let me know in the comments below what y'all think about this mock draft. Put a lot of time and effort into it. So y'all can rip me in the comments. It's cool. You guys can let me know if y'all learn anything, whatever it is. I appreciate y'all tuning in, though. And I hope you guys have a wonderful night. Spend it with those you love the most. And until the next time, peace out, baby.